It is not.
I do apologise for that.
We had a slightly early lunch, and that was all good for us, to be honest. So there was no problem. Indeed, I got a free coffee. So there you go. You obviously are aware of what the Commission's work is. My role in this is independent chair. I was approached by Kirklees Council, and I've been working with them over the last decade, and so I readily accept it. To a large extent, because I think that they're asking the right questions at the right time. I think this is an extremely timely commission, not only in the context of what's happening in England in terms of devolution and reorganisation of local government, but also in the wake of European Union referendum. You know, questions about democracy are permeating in society. I'm still getting over listening to two people on a bus coming out of Huddersfield up to Limley arguing over Article 50 and thinking, wow. That's a moment. I think it's probably appropriate if you just introduce yourself, and then we'll introduce ourselves on the team.
Yep. So I'm Justin Griggs. I'm the Head of Policy and Development at NALC, the National Association of Local Councils. We represent England's 10,000 parish and town councils, the grassroots of democracy. I've been in local government ever since I left school, and for the last 16 years I've been now helping to raise the profile and champion parish councils as far as we possibly can.
Andrew Cooper, I'm a councillor and a member of the Commission.
Jen Wilson, councillor, member of the Commission.
Andrew Balfour, councillor and member of the Commission.
Spencer Wilson, Democratic Governance and Democratic Services at the Kirklees Council.
And Eric Firth, a member of the Commission.
Just to sort of start off, what we're doing at the moment is that we've been consulting with local citizens and with a parish councillor. We did try and get more parish councillors in, but we struggled to get them to engage, which is a bit of a shame. Over the last month, around Kirklees, this month we are holding a number of sessions here in London, also in Greater Manchester, and in Kirklees, talking to a range of stakeholders. During October and November, we're going to write up a set of report recommendations, which those draft recommendations will go out to all those who have engaged with us. We'll be sending you a copy of those, and we'll be very grateful for your views on the conclusions we draw, and that will then be presented to Kirklees Council in December, and also to Whitehall and to various stakeholder groups across the country. So this is an ambitious piece of work, and thank you very much again for giving me time. I suspect that beyond the sort of tectonic shift in the tectonic plates of regional local government driven from Westminster and Whitehall, one of the questions that's vexing us is this tension in many ways, and certainly a change in the relationship between representative and participative democracy. And in some senses, you are at a very interesting perspective. You bring an interesting perspective because parish and town councils are adjacent to, part of, but in many ways slightly distinctive from local authority government. I wonder if you have any thoughts about how you could resolve those current tensions between representative and participative democracy.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth adding into that, or I'd certainly add into this consideration what we see happening in our bit of local government, what we've seen with referendum around direct democracy as well. So I think there are three strands at play here, which is worth reflecting on, and we've certainly got some views on that. Both this interaction between representative, participative, and then also direct democracy, which has become much more commonplace, and certainly something that this government is very keen to promote and to see used more widely. Also, just by way of, I guess, further introduction, in terms of the reflections and the help that we can provide from the National Association of Local Councils as a parishes body, everything we're rooted in is the local, and it's very much from the perspective of the councils that exist across most of England, of which 2/3 is covered by parish councils. We're the only growing bit of local government. More and more councils being created year on year, and we've seen more than 200 established over the last decade or more, which is interesting in terms of how the rest of local government is shaping out, and the shift towards combined authorities, which Jonathan was talking about earlier, getting councils to collaborate across a wider scale. We really focused on the most local, places that often represent a handful of people, all the way through to some parts of the country that represent tens of thousands of people. So Coalfield, Birmingham, is one of our newest councils, been recently established by local people saying, and here's my link back to your question, we want more representative democracy that is truly local. You know, we have a tier of local government that is Birmingham City Council that provides a range of services for us and represents us. We have MPs that represent us in Westminster, but we want something more that is more truly local and more truly accountable. And we are prepared to have that conversation locally about what that means to us, around the kinds of things that really matter in South Coalfield that don't matter to other bits of the city. You know, why having another set of local elected representatives is a good thing for us, and adding in, you know, a new tier of local democracy, and why paying more for improving our area and investing in our local services is very much a good thing. What we've certainly seen in our bit of local government is an improvement and a modernisation of our bit of representative democracy. Certainly councils becoming modernising how they work, our councillors improving their skills and their role within the system and within their communities, you know, that bridge between principal authorities and some of you as councillors and other groups and residents locally. But also, you know, almost reimagining how you do local stuff and how you get things done within the constraints of a democratic body that has its roots in 1894, but in a modern context people want very different things from parish councils. So they're combining and modernising the representative bit of their role. You are elected to serve and do things and make spending decisions on our behalf with, you know, a much more subtle and collaborative way of engaging with local people and groups to get things done. Throw that into the mix of direct democracy and whether it's parish polls, neighbourhood planning and local referendums and the referendum that we've just seen. You know, direct democracy can also be a powerful tool for telling our councils and our representatives what they think about local issues and how they want them to take action.
Yeah. That's interesting that there is that sort of sense in which direct democracy is sort of seen almost as a bridge between the two, between representative and partisan democracy in some senses.
Well, we've just seen a trend, you know, just to kind of elaborate on that, we've just seen a trend over a number of months where a number of parish polls have been triggered in some of our parish areas by local people saying, here is something that matters to us. We're going to use a very old-fashioned piece of law, which actually we're campaigning, you know, to modernise and make more kind of in tune with how the modern world works, to say, here's an issue, we want to put a question to local people on this issue. We want our representatives and our councils to take account of that, and it's been used more and more increasingly in recent months. But again, people, I guess, bridging that gap, but then also finding a way of engaging with their representatives through that tool of saying, here's a question, we're going to put it to the people, and then, you know, we want to see some action and some accountability from those that we elect to take this forward.
Are those polls usually online, or what's the format in which they are?
So they're not usually online. They're conducted. The conduction of those polls is done in the same way we have an election. So, you know, we'd like to see that modernised, and we certainly, you know, put forward to government the case that, you know, if they want to test how we modernise and digitise our democracy and our voting, parish polls are quite a safe way of doing that. On a question around, you know, should we have parking has been quite a common one, or on neighbourhood planning, or other kind of questions around something that happens in the area. You know, why shouldn't people be able to vote in a way that isn't just getting a ballot card, going into a polling station and voting in that way? Quite a safe space to do that. The question's been on a range of issues, but the process takes place in the same way of local elections, but a narrower window within which to vote, which is out of step with elections. Which is why we've been, you know, calling for a modernising of those rules.
And you find that, to a certain extent, addresses the common criticism that politicians only are seen at election time, that there isn't this dialogue in between election points.
So I disagree with that premise entirely in terms of the work of a parish council. Our council, because they're rooted in the community, from the community, and I don't mean to upset any other elected representatives here or elsewhere. You know, are really.
You're not going to upset
me. But are very in touch, you know, with local people. You know, they're very visible, very active locally, and I think that is the strength that the parish council tier of local democracy brings, you know, to the governance of our country. You know, and hence why we've seen, you know, more so than any other bit of our local democracy, this explosion of areas wanting to have a new way of running themselves, organising themselves and doing things.
Just on the parish poll side of things, I've used the threat of the parish poll to actually stop the obliteration of the middle school system in Kirklees, but actually not used it. One of the issues that there is that parish council budgets are quite small. Parish polls cost money.
Yep.
And parish polls, you can imagine a system whereby you've got a council which has got a budget of, say, 120,000, but to do a parish poll might cost £8,000,
yep.
£9,000,
yep.
and so that sort of democracy costs.
Yeah, yeah. So
you've got to consider very carefully when you do and don't use it.
And there is a price of democracy, not least direct democracy and the cost of a poll, which people need to consider, and the parish council will need to consider. But also just the cost of politics and the cost of local democracy more generally. We would like to see more parish councils holding elections, contested elections.
Sure.
Probably something that we'll come on to today, so that more people feel they've had a chance to come forward, people have a choice of the people they want to represent them, but the cost of doing so shouldn't be something that's pushed away and said, actually, we don't want to have an election.
You just explore cost of democracy. I mean, because one of the driving forces from central government at the moment is about reducing the cost of democracy, less MPs, a drive for less councillors, and so the profession of politician is under threat. And I guess is there a successful counter argument that you need more at the bottom if you've got less at the top? Is that?
Well, the counter argument is what's happening naturally in communities, places that are saying we want more elected representatives, we want more democracy, we don't mind paying more for that. And I use Sutton Coldfield as the illustration of that. There are 24 people now in Sutton Coldfield as elected as councillors that weren't there before. So there is a price to that council, what its precept is, the elections that recently took place, where 60 people stood for 24 seats, highly contested. The mainstream political parties and residents that weren't affiliated were all hugely interested in getting involved, playing a role, making decisions and working with other people. As part of this new body that's going to improve Sutton Coldfield. But they voted with their feet in the referendum to say we want this and we're happy to pay more for it.
That's a great example, and you should be an advocate for your members, which is great. But I've heard other arguments as well which say, what's this parish council for? What do I get? I'm just paying an extra £10-15 on top of my council tax. Now I believe that it's worth it, because I'm again an advocate of parish councils. I believe in them passionately. I think there is a counter view out there about them, and that's all about how you're doing.
Yes. And that value for money argument of in those instances of those councils needs to be challenged. People need to come forward and to be asking those questions. Whatever tier it is this adding value?
Am I self-fulfilling demise, which is where the costs, the parish precept is brought down, and then people start saying, well, we spend most of the administration costs, and then you end up with people calling for parish councils to be dissolved. Have you had parish councils dissolved?
So some have been. So there have been a handful of councils in the 16 years I've been involved in the sector that have been abolished, set against more than 200 that have been created. And the drivers for those areas where residents have been dissatisfied with what they've been getting from their parish council have varied enormously, but the trend has hugely outweighed that on the other side, with areas wanting to have a parish.
Do you want to tell us a bit about quality parish councils and their status and how many you've got those?
And part of the link back, and then I guess to that our parish is providing value for money, and the cost of democracy is something that we've been championing, and the sector has very much been embracing in improving the way we do local democracy at the most local level. So you mentioned quality parishes. That was an initiative very much born out of the Labour government in the late 90s and then early 2000s. It was part of their modernising local government plans, which those of you familiar with the 98 modernising local government touch with the people kind of white paper, it very much came from there. We want to modernise and strengthen all bits of our local government. The then Alan Michael was very keen champion in rural areas for the role that parish councils can play, and wanted to see how we can strengthen their role. So the government, working with us and other partners, introduced a range of measures to promote what good looks like and the kind of things that parish councils should be doing, from a democratic mandate to having councillors with skills and the understanding of the law and the way they should be doing things to improve their area, a clerk and officers that were carrying out and trying to deliver the vision for the councillors, make sure they had the right qualifications and training to work on behalf of councils, communications, community engagement, a whole range of other measures. That's since been updated, and we recently, only last year, kind of relaunched our latest iteration of our standard scheme for parish councils, which is very sector-led. We've made sure that our councils have been in the driving seat of saying, we're committed to improving how we do things, committed to improving the skills and how we work with our partners and with others. So the local council awards scheme we launched last year, very much building on the foundations of the Quality Parishes scheme, but listening to what other partners have said, principal councils, government, other bodies have said, actually the things we want in this initiative that promotes improvement, that means councils got something to aim for and get better, is a gradual process. We have three levels now, where before we had one basket of levels, and it becomes much more, more challenging and far-reaching for councils at the top end, but it gives them a ladder to get better and better. So we're certainly working with some of the councils that you may have outlined that might be down towards the foundation end, to be looking at how they're doing things, how they're running themselves, how they're governing their democratic mandate, and a whole range of things. So just to help them on that journey, to help them improve and get better, and give better value for money, better services for local people. But we're a year into that initiative. It's really important that principal authorities and others would work with us on that. We want our parishes to be the best they possibly can be, but alone we can't deliver that. We need others to work with parishes to help them to succeed and to flourish.
Yeah, question?
Also, could I just come back on the the funding kind of side of things? Because we've seen an interesting, I think the cost of local democracy, the cost of parishes is an interesting one, where not only are we seeing this trend of people saying we want more democracy, we want more parishes, we're happy to pay more for that. We've seen some interesting kind of trends in how the wider public services landscape is impacting on what parishes do, how they're funded, and how much they cost. So over the last few years, we've seen the parish council precepts go from increases around 5% down to 4%, down to 3% this year, as a result of a lot of onward devolution from principal councils, an area saying, we want to do more, we want to be more active, we want to get involved in things that we haven't been involved in before. Precepts have risen again, quite dramatically, up to 6%, which is a good thing if the council is engaging with local people and saying, hey, here's the deal. What is it that matters to you? What are the challenges that we're facing as an area that our principal authorities, and whether it's Kirklees or elsewhere, that they are facing? What's the role we can play within that? Now we can do it, we can step in, we can say things, we can get involved in new activity, but it is going to cost you. This is the most direct form of funding in local government that we have, through the precepts parish councils. Government money, direct funding from local residents. It's a simple deal.
The vehicles for asset transfers, and libraries, same, that's happened in Kirklees.
I just want to take on that question, because it's interesting. One of the things the way we did our public consultation was that there was a marked sense that many of those citizens we engaged with were less cynical about local politicians than they were about national politicians, but certainly felt that there was an issue of connectivity between accountability and some way in which they could actually have a sense in which their councillors were achieving what they were asked to do, their aspiration. I wonder from your own experience whether you could possibly draw on a sense about if and how that's achieved at a parish level. How does this connectivity work between local politicians and their constituents?
Well, I think the starting point, the ballot box is the ultimate democratic test. People stand for election, you either vote for people or you don't. One of the challenges that we face in the parish bit of local government is there are too few elections that take place. So people stand, for their parish council. It doesn't trigger an election. The community, and there are 80,000 parish councillors around the country, all doing a really good job. Some of them have a democratic mandate through the ballot box and through election. Some of them don't. We'd like to see that increased and improved. But I guess that's the ultimate test. What then we need to move on to is other ways in which the council, as a corporate body and councillors, can account back to local people and report back to local people on what they're doing. So the democratic mandate test needs to improve, and there's work that we're doing with government and others, and we've recently written a report based on our experiences of elections in 2015, when most parish councils in the country had elections. We submitted to government and others, and I can happily share that with you, which provides some food for thought on this issue around representativeness and democratic mandate and accountability. Certainly what parish councils will probably, what I see is a collective responsibility to local people rather than individual responsibility. So in most cases, individual councillors won't be accounting back for individual things they've done. They will come together to make decisions on behalf of the area rather than be, trailing individual successes or achievements that they have delivered as a councillor. It doesn't mean to say they haven't delivered any, but the council as a corporate body and its achievements tend to be promoted and put forward more than individual achievement. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there aren't councillors that we have that are very, very independent, very much keen to stand on a particular agenda for something they want to fix, some issues that they feel very passionate about in their area or in their particular patch, that they will want to go back to local people and say, here are some things I've done for you and that I've fixed. I think a strengthening of the process or how councils work could be some annual reporting. Our councils need to report back to local people annually on how they spent their money, kind of what they've done, setting out their priorities for the year ahead. There's no reason why individual councillors shouldn't do that. It's not part of our award scheme at the moment, but it's certainly something I've heard some of our councils considering, thinking about individual councillor reporting, just so people are absolutely clear. And when I vote for and elect people, the people that are our councillors, what are they doing on my behalf? What are the kind of things that they're delivering for me?
Well, one of the strong arguments for parishes is not simply that they can raise a precept and help us in difficult times in that way, but the other thing is that they're treated as community organisations and have access to funding that councils don't, and so as a democratic body they've got access to lottery funding and all sorts of bits of cash that we wouldn't normally get. So I think one of the things I've often thought is that parish councils ought to have leverage as one of their performance indicators about how much money they can actually lever in that otherwise communities wouldn't have access to.
And certainly what we see in terms of the differences of how our councils operate. Some of our councils are hugely successful about levering in money from other sources, be it private sector or from grants and from other funders, more so than others. And they set themselves targets in their plans for doing that. We'd certainly encourage, and through some of our work, we want to encourage that kind of practice. So we're less reliant just on precept income, on direct taxation, but much more innovative about where other bits of money can come from, whether that's from other partners, like say private sector, charging and trading and using the new general power of competence and those kinds of things.
I think one of the questions that has certainly come up from our consultation is that there is a desire for councillors, local authority councillors, to bind their communities more and to interact with their communities, to strengthen that sense of local connectivity. And just it'd be interesting to hear your views on what kinds of things you think they could possibly undertake to achieve that aspiration.
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, what has come out from the consultation is that local citizens see councillors as, in many ways, being a fulcrum. They have the potential to bind and to strengthen that sense of local community identity and cohesion. Obviously, parish councils, from what you're saying, parish councils do achieve this. I just wondered whether you could give us some ideas about how they manage to achieve this sense in which they can bring and strengthen community cohesion.
Yeah. So in terms of kind of, I guess, at a macro scale, in terms of strengthening communities and community cohesion, we would advocate more areas, looking into setting up more parish councils, as a way of delivering that, certainly in unparished areas. I think back to some of the strengths of what make our councils quite a powerful player, quite locally, is being that fulcrum and the glue that binds a number of organisations together. Bringing that leadership role that they have through their democratic mandate, through having that lead role to work with other bodies. Our best councils have those partnerships with local bodies that straddle this, I guess, the kind of the community nature that you were suggesting that parish councils have with this local government kind of body that comes together with councillors that are elected and kind of follows rules and has accountability and has direct taxation. Bringing all of that together into that melting pot to deliver and develop, and this is what our successful councils do, is a vision for their local area, which will then set out kind of who is going to be taking on various roles within that and setting out a much kind of longer term master plan. That's what we see our best councils doing. I've kind of brought a number of things with you to throw into the mix for your work, and in terms of some background information, in terms of our star councils and the kind of things that they do. This is our initiative to promote what some of the best councils in the country are doing, and whether that's their businesses with the private sector, with the voluntary sector, with their principal authorities, which is I think austerity and devolution are driving much more collaboration between principal councils and parishes at the moment at a rate that we've not seen, not just in terms of just onward devolution, but really more a case of working out that there is a natural partnership there that everybody needs to leverage if we're going to continue to try and provide services that people are used to, and services that in the future people are going to want from our council.
So, I'm going to remember
How much party political involvement is there in the parish council?
So it's growing. It's kind of my starting answer to that. In the main, parish and town councils are not party political. It's a very contested issue in our sector. I will talk to our councillors who come at this from two very different perspectives. So they're mostly independent, no political affiliation. But party politics is growing in the sector. A colleague of mine did a study several years ago that compared the number of people that have stood for election in some town councils, so it was a particular interest group of our councils, across a 10-year period, and the number of people that come forward from the mainstream political parties had increased quite considerably, and you draw on kind of the various merits of why that might be a good thing in a council, some of the downsides to where that to what might happen as a result. Certainly drawing on the elections that have taken place in the last few years, certainly in some of our new councils. I mentioned Sutton Coldfield and a few other areas. Bingley in Yorkshire was another one of our new councils created. It's clear the mainstream political parties are interested in fielding candidates, getting elected at a local level, running and taking control of parish council. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have seen as much interest. That has grown enormously over the years. I think the Liberal Democrats were quite keen through their community politics way of doing things to start getting much more involved at a local level. We've seen that increasingly over time, and in certain places, accelerating into some of the other political parties. So it's growing, which is no surprise, given that in some cases we've got a lot to play for in terms of the budgets and the kinds of things that some of our councils are involved in now.
We were told it was the opposite in Kirklees, weren't we? The political parties had abandoned the parish councils, and one of the results was that there's a concerning increase in the number of people who are just co-opted.
Coming back to this point around kind of the democratic mandate that councils have. We'd like to see fewer co-options. We'll see more people coming forward, and whether that's people getting really energised around getting involved in local democracy, making a difference in your area, and kind of recognising that's a way that you can do that. and that will see out this issue of not enough people coming forward. We need to co-opt people forward. It comes back to this issue around cost. There is a cost of elections, a cost of democracy. We want to see more people getting involved. We actually, whether it's political parties or whoever, raising awareness, promoting the fact that there is an institution at local level that can improve. Your area. It's called parish council. You can get involved. It's a rewarding role. It's one way in which you can really improve your area. Not enough is done, I think, in that area. We do as much as we can, working with partners like the Local Government Association and the government, but certainly there isn't enough emphasis or investment in that kind of area. But it wouldn't surprise me that in some parts of the country, party politics is playing less of a role. In other parts of the country, it's playing more of a role. Like I said, that can have its downsides. Some people can get then very switched off if a particular town council is being run and have the same rows and fallouts and tensions as they see through the rest of the system. In other cases, it can work well. There can be political leadership, there could be vision, and that can deliver the kind of changes that people want. But places vary enormously, and that's I guess one of the fascinating things around our bit of local democracy. Of the 10,000 places that have parishes at the moment, they are all hugely different in geography and size and makeup. That it's no surprising that some of these kinds of things are going to vary.
Does it work more effectively when the whole of a council area is parished?
Again, it varies.
Is Milton Keynes an interesting example?
So Milton Keynes is one. There are a number of parts of the country that are fully parished, and in more recent times they tend to be aligned to areas that have reorganised through local government reorganisation. So Cornwall's fully parished. That happened as a part of the package of reorganisation. Likewise in Northumberland, I think now mostly Cheshire, Western Chester, apart from Chester as a town, is now fully parished. So the developments in unparished areas is moving down that way, but it's hard. I was another piece of work that we're involved in at the moment is the Councillor Commission that De Montfort University is running with the MJ, the Local Government Association, and ourselves, and we're holding a round table of councillors very recently who had very different experiences of where parishes work effectively with their principal authorities. So there were some experiences there with some parishes that were in a district area that was not fully parished, that had a brilliant relationship with the district, not so great with the county council, and then vice versa. Unfortunately, the simple answer to that is it really does vary from place to place.
Could you say a little bit why there is that inconsistency in those relationships?
Well, everything comes down to people. And whether the people in those particular councils are getting on, whether that's the council in the parish councils and the clerk and the principal authority counterparts, whether at the upper tier level, whether that principal authority at heart really values the contribution that parish and town councils can make. If they do, and if a direction or a vision has been set at council leader or kind of senior member level, that can have a huge bearing on what those relationships look like further down the chain and some of the operational relationship between the parish and the principal authority. So if you get the tone and the relationship right at senior level, that certainly can work its way. That can work its way down.
The demographic of the parish councils that are working really well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Are there a lot of similarities in terms of age, employment status, those kind of things? Just thinking, if I went to a lot of my electorate that are perhaps 20s to early 40s, where young families and just life getting in the way, just wondering if the more successful areas are perhaps areas where there's a higher percentage of retired people.
Do you mean in terms of successful parishes, or is it more common that the types of people that are councillors are of a certain age?
Yeah.
Varies enormously. From some places we've got with high degrees of poverty and deprivation, we've got hugely successful councils, and they've really tailored their role around trying to kind of meet the needs to be in touch with some of those issues. So you mentioned Milton Keynes. So Campbell Park Parish Council has got a very, very deprived and a very mixed and diverse area. For more than a decade, that's something they've tried to really focus on at the heart of their work, celebrating that diversity, really trying to build community cohesion, really trying to get involved in the kind of things that really matter to their area, beyond kind of the bricks and mortar kind of stuff. They're really trying to get involved in those kind of much more challenging issues. So female genital mutilation is something that the council was working with other partners and health about, because they know it's such a big thing that affects their area. So the characteristics of the people in their area in terms of employment and other indicators probably wouldn't suggest that they would be an area that would be succeeding. They just people coming together that are working cohesively. They understand what the issues are that are in their area and they're trying to tackle them. Vice versa, the same might be applying to another part of the country. It is fair to say that the characteristics of the people that are parish councils very much reflect the kinds of people that are councillors. In other tiers, we've been very heartened over the last few years to see, a newer face of people coming forward to become parish councillors, younger people that are working, people from different kinds of backgrounds as well. Again, there's not enough being done, to promote the role and promote the sector to get people from those kinds of backgrounds coming forward. If we're going to have a local democracy that works well, that people can recognise and can be in touch with and connect to, the people that are councillors, particularly at our level, being the most local, have got to be the kinds of people that are from the community, not just the preserve of certain people that have got the time to give up to become councillors.
One of the things that came up in the conversations we do is that there was a distinct lack of understanding about the roles and responsibilities of local authority councils. They weren't quite sure what the remit of their member of parliament was and how that correlated across. And just wondering whether that same conundrum affects the relationship between parish and town councils and local authority councils, and to what extent that is a problem, and how do you address that problem? How do you actually give citizens a clear sense about what is the remit of each of their elected officials?
So I think what we hear from our councillors and from our councillors that it often is a problem still with local people, that they still don't understand or don't want to understand how the system works, who's responsible for what, and who is a councillor for what. And I think in some of those cases where councils would probably hold up their credentials high in saying, actually, we think our local people have got a better understanding of that. It's because the bits of local government are getting their act together. They're trying to work together to explain to local people exactly how their area is governed and how things work and who does what, and making sure that the system works with much more, I guess, synergy and doesn't just come across as disjointed. And so we've got more increasingly our councils are becoming more of the, I guess, a front of house for public services, where people certainly where they've got a physical location or a premise will go into, and that'll be their first port of call for engaging with councils at different levels. And you would expect that entry point then to be signposting in and to be almost a seamless way of engaging with the councils. If you don't have that, if you don't have those councils kind of working together or even kind of trying to work together, it's no surprise that people are going to say, well, I went to this council, they haven't got a clue what's going on, they sent me away and they sent me to go and speak to them or said, speak to your ward council, there's nothing to do with us, kind of governor. I think there's a growing responsibility on councils to get their act together on this, so that people out there do better understand the complicated system that we have in this country, to make it less complicated, make it much easier for them to engage with whether it's their local politicians or how to get things done, or to engage with councils at all levels. So I think we've got some examples where our councils do that really well. Undoubtedly we'll have some parts of the country where there's more work to be done, both on the side of parish councils and with other partners as well. And again, back to the public's understanding of what's going on in public services and in our local democracy. At the moment, we've got to work harder at that, so people in Manchester can understand what is their Metro Mayor going to do, what's the combined authority going to do, what are the Manchester councils going to do. in some parts of those Manchester councils, what are the parishes going to do as well? It's very, very complicated. So it puts the onus back onto all of those public bodies to try much, much harder to demystify that for the public and allow them, or at least try and allow them, to understand what on earth is going on and how they can engage with that.
So Kirklees, we have rural areas, generally rural areas, parish, and the urban areas not. Now I represent an urban ward, generally urban, a bit of rural, and we have a community forum. Quite a successful community forum, does a lot of things, brings a lot of value to the community. And I look at that community forum and I think that's almost like an embryonic parish council. You can imagine the capacity that has been built in the ward is such that a parish council could come out of that. You can imagine that being a possibility. It's something I personally would like to see. There we go. But if you look at other parts of Kirklees, they're not there. They're not in that place. And I think is there something that your organisation would do to help community capacity build, to get people in a place where a parish council might be an organisation that might evolve out of that? Because I can see a role for getting people in the right place to where they from where they can jump to the next jump to become a parish.
So I guess the short answer to that is we can. As a pro-local democracy organisation, we'll help anywhere, any area. We'll talk to anybody that wants to explore or think about going from absolutely nothing happening in their area to different types of organising in different bodies to stepping that up to establishing a parish council. Be happy to explore that with you a bit further if you wanted to. And pretty much of the 200 plus areas that I've already mentioned earlier, we've had a hand in supporting either the principal authorities or the communities directly themselves, to work through some of those issues around how you go from where they are, whether you're at a standing start and there isn't an entity or a body there or a community group or a community anchor organisation, kind of going from a standing start to saying, we want to have a democratic elected body with a budget that represents us. And there are a number of things we can do that we can do with our partners to work that through, with a group or with a local area, to look at what that direction of travel kind of might look like, going from where they are now and painting a picture of, well, here's the things you could have. Be clear it's going to solve the problems that you can, or the issues that you want to address. Certainly, we want to make sure, given that parish councils are a long-term thing. We've got a lot of parishes around since 1894. It's a long-term way of organising yourselves to improve your local area, and it's quite right that the process is thorough enough to test that local appetite, and there are a set of rules and a process in place to do that. But we can certainly help areas think that through, understand those rules, start to map out the kinds of issues that they are facing, and then start, if they want to, then to work towards whether the parish council is the right solution or the right vehicle to tackle things in their area.
I think the attraction from a Kirklees point of view might be that we've had several faltering attempts to devolve power to area committees, district committees, and none have been particularly satisfactory. You look at it and think, well, is the problem the fact that the council as a body wants to hold on to power, wants to, and is it actually institutionally possible for one council to devolve things meaningfully to itself within those areas? So the attraction may be having a separate body makes that possible, because you have self-governing bodies which have got a mandate for all those things. And so looking at that sort of level, you can think, well, we're never going to make devolution to a lower level work in Kirklees because the parent body won't let go. And so you've got to have a separate body if you're going to make it work at all.
Yeah, I guess therein lies the challenge of devolution of power from central government, to areas, from councils, further down. Someone somewhere has got to be bold enough and brave enough and have the foresight to kind of let go a little bit and to say, actually, people in our area do know best. They can run things. They can be responsible. They can be accountable for decisions, and for money, and to actually to see that through. It's not without its challenges. It's fair to say that most principal councils find this quite difficult, find this quite challenging. It's only in recent years that the people in communities in London have been able to set up a parish council if they want one. The law precluded it for absolutely decades, which is completely crazy. Anywhere else in the country, Kirklees, from the northeast down to Cornwall, if you have an area that didn't have a parish council, if you wanted to set one up and go down that road and follow that process, you could do it. In London, you couldn't. So we and others campaigned long and hard to change the law to allow that to happen in the face of a great deal of opposition from councils in London that said it will never work in London. People don't want it. And absolutely, what's the point?
So has it happened in London?
So Queen's Park in Westminster is London at the moment. London's Vanguard Parish Council established a couple of years ago, again by local people saying, there are a set of circumstances in our area, in one of the most deprived wards in northwest Westminster, that are starting to work against us. There is austerity. There are a number of other challenges we have locally. We've got a set of other factors that mean we need to look towards self-governing in a way that steps us on from being a neighbourhood forum and a loose way of organising ourselves and tapping into money from the council and other sources that builds in much more resilience in a model that builds in a budget, builds in accountability through elections and a democratic mandate. It means we can lever in money from other sources as well, but really builds upon the credentials that we already have with local. We're reliable, we're trusted, and we're well known, and we've got community leaders that have got skills and have got capacity, and we've got relationships, and networks. They're still a couple of years in, really kind of building upon those early kind of green shoots. Community events, they're giving out funding to groups, they're working with other partners, they're looking at asset transfer. They're showing and proving back to the councils back in the day that places do want it, they can make a success of it. There are other parts of London and other urban areas across the country that are also asking the question, how do we run ourselves? How do we improve our area given the difficulties we're facing? And it is in urban areas that we're seeing the real growth and the real acceleration of more local democracy in the country.
Andrew, sorry. How can you ensure sustainability? Will these new councils still be around in 25 years' time?
So most of our councils have been around since 1894.
The new ones?
So generally, of our new councils, they're still all going. So touch wood, and hopefully they will continue to succeed. As I pointed out, only a handful of councils, for a set number of reasons in those areas, have been abolished. The trend has been the creation of councils across the country. That's why the process is designed to make sure that the council is thorough in looking at whether there is a desire and there is a need for a council, and there is support for it, that it will provide effective and convenient local government, that it is filling a space that doesn't exist at the moment. So there are already built in a number of tests that an area would have to go through to start to look at whether a council should be established. And from there in, it's down to the community to make the success of that. The people that come forward and use that opportunity, use that that new vehicle to really make a success of it. So kind of long-term sustainability is not guaranteed, but it's kind of it's built into the model, and it's certainly built into the support network that we and others provide, is to make sure that council gets all the help that it needs, to really make a difference.
That's why I didn't use the word guarantee.
Nothing in life is guaranteed.
You're reacting to a snapshot in time, and we have, you've got a group of enthusiasts who want to do something for the community, and the way they do it is by creating a new council, as opposed to the ones we heard about earlier who want to help their community by starting a campaign through petition In 20, 25 years' time, those enthusiastic residents might have died, moved away, and you may not be replaced by other similarly enthusiastic residents. Because the message we were given when we were talking here in Kirklees was that in 20 years' time our parish councils might have withered on the vine because the generation that keep them, sustain them, will be gone.
So we certainly don't see any evidence of that in terms of from what our councillors are saying to us and what we see in terms of what they're doing and the kinds of people that are coming forward. So there are undoubtedly, you know, a load of our hyperlocal heroes that have been around forever in our councils are moving on to other things, but other people are coming forward and getting involved, you know, in their area and becoming a parish council is one way of doing that. We'll continue to promote that and help that and champion that, and hopefully others will. You know, as well, there's no guarantee that you guys as councillors, there's going to be another kind of flow of people that are coming forward saying, "Hey, I want to run Kirklees." You know, it's an amazing thing to do. You know, I've got this mojo in me that's public service, and I want to help my area. There is no guarantee. What we can do is do everything we possibly can, you know, to sow those seeds and to create those conditions, you know, that bring people in, that demonstrate to them and raise awareness that it is a way that you can self-govern, improve your area, you do things for yourself, be locally accountable.
Okay.
So if you look at Scunthorpe Library, that's Debbie Dale has taken that over, and so you've got Kirklees Parish Council, which Kirklees Library has been saved as a result of that parish council being in existence, and so you've got bodies which are now holding assets. You've got bodies which have precepts. You have bodies which have clerks, administrative structures. You know, they are mini entities in their own, and so they will fluctuate in terms of whether people will or won't stand for election or co-opted. But the institution remains there, and it's a lifeboat.
Institutions don't last forever, Andrew.
I think the Commission has many attributes, but futurology is not one of them. It's probably the polite way of putting it. If we did have that capacity, then I'd be getting the lottery numbers down as quickly as possible.
Just very briefly on Andrew's point around the kind of things that you've illustrated there. One of the things I'll leave with you is a report we've just recently published with the Local Government Chronicle, which very much tells the story of how parishes are changing and how they're doing increasingly more of those kinds of things of taking on services you would never imagine them to be involved in, being much more innovative, looking at big ticket issues around health and social care, really getting involved in culture and arts. Neighbourhood planning is a success only because people in parish areas are embracing. How do you grow and develop your area in a way that you can feel much more in the driving seat of trying to shape where your area is happening. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. If kind of one thing I certainly want to leave you with is very much the message of how parishes are changing, how they're modernising, how it really can be a vehicle for improving the local area. And as a commission, and certainly any area that we would talk to, we would always be happy to share more with you and provide you with perhaps more examples or illustrations. Or given that you probably only had, unfortunately, only been able to speak to one councillor in Kirklees, I'm sure we could perhaps help try and plug you into a few others, either more locally or further afield, again to probably help delve into a little bit more detail some of the kinds of things that I've touched upon today.
Well, this in itself is very interesting document, so I'll make sure that all the
these
get to take those away. Thank you very much. I am looking at the time. We've slightly over it, which is good news. Thank you very much for coming, speaking to us, and being so very open, honest, and deeply informative. It really has helped. It's really given us a sense about that sort of role of parish and town councils in the wider question about local democracy. And I think that it's quite clear that they are an integral facet of that. As I said when we started, we will be taking evidence over the next month. We will be then writing it. We will, of course, contact you with a copy of the report. We'll be deeply interested in your views on that. If you do have any other contacts and you want to get in contact, do get in contact with Carl. He'll make sure that the rest of us get that. And any help you can give, we'll be much appreciated. It's enlightening, particularly I come from an area where there isn't parish council. council, and it is interesting to sort of see how that does work in other parts of the country. But thank you very much, and you can now go out and enjoy the sun rather than us freezing to death in this
Fridge.
fridge. It is, isn't it? Yes, it is. But yes, so thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we'll make sure we'll take it and get a copy of that. This is very interesting. Thank you very much.
Fine.
Now I think actually, Diane, I'm going to drag you off into the